Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in to Langfocus TV. I am your host Paul, and today we are going to talk about the difference between informal and formal language and which one you should focus on learning when you're learning a new language. We have two special guests with us today. They both happen to be cousins of mine. One is my cousin Fred, and the other is my cousin Ivan. So welcome to both of you. Yo, what's up? Okay, so let's start off by talking about some of the differences between formal language and informal language, and later on we'll get into which one you should focus on learning when you learn a new language. So, Formal Frank, I'd like to start with you. Would you tell us a little bit about formal language and how it differs from informal language? Formal speech usually mirrors the written language. So when people are speaking formally, they are speaking with the written language in mind. They might be seeing the sentences inside their head as they are saying them. They are keeping grammar in mind. They're conscious of grammar, and they're constructing their sentences carefully to follow the rules of grammar that they learned in school. And they might be using some vocabulary that they see written in books, but they don't usually use in casual conversation. And maybe the most important thing, the most important difference is that they are enunciating all of the words very clearly. So the people who find the formal language quite easy to learn are people who are visual learners and people who are kind of analytical. So that gets them thinking about the different pieces of the sentence and how to put them together. Those kinds of people learn the formal language quite easily. And they typically tend to be quite introverted. So I'm this type of person, I'm this type of learner. I find it quite easy to learn the formal language, well, relatively easy to learn the formal language. I find it easier to learn how to understand news broadcasts in a new language than I do to understand casual conversations on the street. That's the type of learner I am naturally, just because of my personality and my learning style. I'm a visual learner, I'm introverted, and I'm quite analytical. That's all very interesting. So let's hear from Informal Ivan. Can you tell us a little bit about informal language and how that's different from the formal language that Frank described? And the people who learn the formal language really easily, those are like these fucking geeks. Like when people are speaking formally, they're really conscious of their grammar, like they think they're grammar gurus or something like that. So when people are speaking informally, they don't really care if they're speaking perfectly, they just want to get their point across. So they speak naturally, they just say things in whatever way is easiest to say, just so that their friend or whoever can understand them, right? And they don't really worry about saying every word really clearly. That's why when I speak informally like this, I use a lot of contractions. I say things like can't instead of cannot, which those formal speakers might say. There's a lot of reductions too when we're speaking informally, like instead of saying and, like, hey look, there are some cats and dogs, I just say, hey, there's some cats and dogs, like cats and dogs instead of cats and dogs. The and becomes an right? Cats and dogs. Tables and chairs, pens and pencils. Same for some words like for. Instead of saying this video is for you and your friends, I'll say this video is for you and your friends. For. This video is for you and your friends. So some words become reduced, the vowel will change like that, right? A couple other examples are relaxed pronunciation. Instead of saying I want to see a movie, you say I want to see a movie. I wanna, right? It's the reduced pronunciation. Or I've got to do something. I've got to go to work. I gotta go to work. I gotta. Because who cares if you're speaking perfectly? You just want to get your point across, speak naturally so people understand, right? So the people who learn the informal language most easily are people like me. They're outgoing, they're social, they're auditory learners. They're not these visual learners who sit at home reading books and playing on the computer and making graphics all the time. Well, that's all very interesting. So let's get into the question of which one you should learn. So, Formal Frank, what do you think? Which form of language should people focus on? Well, of course you should give priority to the formal language because you want to be intelligent, right? It's the educated language of smart people. It's the language that sounds like you are well-read, like you're a literary person, like you went to university. If you use the language at work, you want to be able to sound educated, to sound professional, to sound smart. You want to be able to speak to people for the first time without causing them any offense. You want to be able to speak with a little bit of formal distance. So the formal language is really the one that you should learn first. That's absolutely the case. There's no question about it whatsoever. Formal is best. All right, very well put. So let's go to Informal Ivan. Which form of language do you think people should focus on learning? Which one should you learn? Of course you should learn the informal language. You want to make friends, right? You don't want to be some geek who sits at home by himself, or you don't want to be someone who just uses the language at work and then never uses it outside of work. The most important part of learning a language is using it. And why would you learn language that nobody ever uses? Why would you learn all this formal vocabulary you can only use like once a year in this business situation, or you only see it once a year in a book? Who wants to learn that? You want to learn the common casual language that you can use all the time. That's what learning a language is all about. It's about making connections, meeting new people, expanding your circle, expanding your horizons by meeting people. That's what a language is for. Why be some robot who speaks like a book? You want to be like this idiot over here? Okay, you guys, break it up. Come on, stop it. You know what? Just listen to me, ignore these guys. They're kind of both right. You need to have a balance of both the informal and the formal language if you're going to go far with this language and really take it seriously. If you have a very specific purpose for learning that language, if you want to use it in a very specific kind of situation, then of course give priority to the variety of language that will most closely mirror that situation. So if you're learning it for business, then focus on the formal, of course. And if you're learning it just to be social and to make friends from that country or whatever, then of course focus on the informal language. But in the case that you are really going to take the language far and you want to learn it fluently over the long term, then of course you need a balance of both, but you still want to have that anchor in the formal language. You want to learn to read and write, not just to be able to speak. So of course the formal language will play an important role if you're going far with that language. Also, take into consideration your personality and your learning type. If you are one of those more introverted, analytical, visual learners who tend to learn the formal language quite easily, then rather than focusing all your attention on the formal language, focus on your weaker area. Focus on the informal language, because that's the part that will be more of a challenge for you. The formal language will come quite naturally for you, so you don't have to focus on it quite as much. Focus on what's weakest for you, and that would be the informal language. And vice versa, if you are a more auditory learner, you're a more social, outgoing person who tends to learn the informal language most easily, then that comes naturally to you. So instead, focus your attention more on the formal language. That's the part that will be more of a challenge and require a bit more of your focus and effort. All right, this is Paul for Langfocus. I hope that was helpful. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree. And also let me know how it is in your language or languages that you have studied, because I haven't studied all the languages in the world. So the difference between formal and informal and which one you should learn might be different depending on the languages that you know. So let me know down below in the comments. All right, have a good night and talk to you later. Peace out. Bye. Another awesome benefit of meditation for language learning is that it helps you with your listening comprehension. So when you're listening, often there's something that's blocking you or getting in your way. Now, what I mean is this. So what I mean by that is this. If you learn a foreign language, but you use your native language's pronunciation, or you use pronunciation that's quite close to your native language's pronunciation, then you're never going to fully be able to access that foreign language or access your skills in that foreign language, because you'll always retreat into your native language.